At precisely 3 a.m., Mave awoke to a relentless symphony of alerts cascading across her phone. The dim glow from the screen cut through the darkness of her bedroom, painting her walls in a cold, eerie light. 1, 2, 3, then an endless stream. 79 notifications, each identical, each carrying the same devastating message: funds withdrawn. Her chest tightened, and her fingers stiffened around the edges of the phone, trembling despite her attempt to stay composed. $3.2 million, gone in the blink of an eye, erased as if it had never existed. For decades, she had labored quietly, saved methodically, watched the small growth of her retirement, every dollar painstakingly tucked away through late nights and sacrifice. And now, at 3:02 a.m., the entire sum vanished without a trace. The room was oppressively silent apart from the electronic chorus, the cold air brushing against her skin as though it were taunting her. Brent's words from the past months whispered in her mind, venomous and calculated. If she wanted to remain under her own roof, she would comply. Sign the papers. Keep quiet. The betrayal twisted inside her, a blade she had never imagined her own son could wield. She had raised him alone, nurtured him, shielded him from the cruelties of life. Yet here he was threatening her security with a casual flick of his entitlement. Maeve's eyes stung as she blinked rapidly, forcing herself to see the glaring digits on the screen. Withdrawal successful. Withdrawal successful. Withdrawal successful. Each notification hammered her heart like a jackhammer against fragile glass. She did not scream. She did not weep. Instead, she inhaled deeply, holding the cool night air, and exhaled slowly, deliberately. She counted each breath, one after another, until the panic thinned to a cold, sharp edge of clarity. As dawn crept reluctantly across the sky, she found herself moving with methodical purpose. Coffee brewed, clothes laid out, emergency folders retrieved from their hiding place behind long-forgotten cereal boxes. These folders, once a precaution she never thought she would need, now held the weight of survival, of strategy. By the time Brent and Kaye appeared unannounced at 7:45 a.m., their presence was irrelevant. Mave was no longer reacting from shock. Kaye, clad in designer wear that suggested effortless wealth, glanced around her kitchen with an air of proprietorship, as though planning renovations she had no right to touch. Brent's smirk, casual and cold, landed the first verbal blow. Sign these papers, he instructed, a refinance, nothing to worry about. Yet the papers sat untouched in front of her, irrelevant without the return of her stolen money. Maeve's gaze hardened, a quiet, simmering resolve settling like a stone in her chest. Every ounce of betrayal, every thread of entitlement her children displayed, sharpened her purpose. They thought she would fold under the weight of familial deception, but they had underestimated the depth of her preparation, the precision of her hidden defenses. Home equity line of credit, the bold words on the paper, signifying nothing for her, but everything for their ambitions. The room's air thickened with tension, Brent leaning forward, his thread a low, dangerous hum. "Don't test me," he said, promising ruin beyond the financial. Maeve's hands, steady now despite the tremor of adrenaline that ran through her veins, wrapped around the familiar warmth of her coffee cup. She did not flinch. She did not argue. Instead, she moved with calm precision, pouring herself another cup, the action deliberate, as she once had when guiding a stubborn child long ago. Kaye's scoff echoed, but it was inconsequential. Maeve's eyes, steady and unyielding, met hers. Dramatic, she said. Stupid, she thought. By the time they departed, warnings issued, doors closed and locked. Mave had already begun the quiet process of preparation. No panic cries, no chaotic calls, just methodical, strategic movements designed to turn every attempt against her into a failure for them. The world outside continued unaware, but inside the walls of her home, A storm had begun to brew, one she controlled entirely. By sunrise, she had contacted her allies, the bank manager she had mentored years ago, legal advocates she trusted, and neighbors who had long observed the subtle manipulations of Brent and Kaye. Each step, each calculated move, was guided by meticulous planning, by a careful mapping of evidence, by the cold realization that justice required more than anger. It required preparation, precision, and patience. As Mave moved through the quiet house, securing documents, scanning evidence, and encrypting records, she felt an unexpected clarity. Betrayal, though sharp and painful, had provided her with focus. The next encounter would not find her unarmed or naive. Every withdrawal, every false document, every audacious threat would be met with countermeasures meticulously crafted. And as the morning light strengthened, Mave felt the first inkling of a dangerous satisfaction, power regained, strategy unfolding, and a battle that for the first time she was fully prepared to win. By mid-morning, Mave was already outside Mercer Federal, standing beneath the muted gray awning that framed the bank's main entrance. The summer air pressed heavily against her, hot and relentless, yet she remained unfazed. Every footstep toward the door was measured, deliberate. Each carried the weight of determination she had cultivated through sleepless nights and meticulous planning. Inside, the bank smelled faintly of disinfectant and polished wood, a sterile environment that now served as the battlefield for her quiet war. Evan Pike, the branch manager and her former protege, emerged within minutes, his expression flickering between surprise and concern the moment he saw her. Mave wasted no time on pleasantries. She dropped the emergency folder onto his polished desk, the subtle thud echoing like a gavel in the otherwise quiet room. Within the folder were meticulous records of the 79 unauthorized withdrawals, every transaction traced to the shell entity registered under Brakemon Group, a company she had never consented to, yet one now central to Brent and Kaye's plan. Evan's fingers moved swiftly across his keyboard, a flurry of taps and clicks, attempting to catch the financial chaos before it spiraled beyond reach. Mave observed silently, her eyes scanning the evidence she had so painstakingly assembled. Screenshots of transfers, notations of timestamps, bank statements, every record meticulously cataloged. She could feel the pulse of control returning with each passing second, the raw fear of the night before transmuting into calculated clarity. They weren't just attempting to siphon her life savings. They were trying to leverage her home, too. A pending lien had been filed under the same shell entity. Maeve's heart, though hardened with resolve, felt a surge of indignation at the audacity of their betrayal. Evan nodded, confirming her worst suspicions. The bulk of the funds had been moved in less than a quarter hour, most directed toward high-risk cryptocurrency notes, some routed to a merchant account in Delaware. Time was critical. Every moment that passed allowed Brent and Kaye to obscure evidence, disperse assets, and tighten the noose around her financial security. Mave didn't panic. Panic was a luxury reserved for the unprepared. She instructed Evan to freeze all accounts immediately, initiate a recall process, and monitor every avenue through which her assets could be moved. He paused, glancing at her with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. "You're serious," he said, as if reminding her that she was no longer simply a client, but a strategist in command of a meticulously planned counteroffensive. "Serious," she replied, calm yet unyielding. The next step required legal intervention. Leah Winters, a community legal advocate and longtime ally, had been waiting for this moment. Her small office, nestled near City Hall, exuded the faint scent of lemon disinfectant and the quiet authority of someone accustomed to navigating battles of law and ethics. Mave presented her findings: falsified power of attorney documents, shell company registrations, unauthorized withdrawals, and the lien request against her home. Leah's sharp eyes scanned the materials, her mind calculating potential strategies, cross-referencing statutes and case precedents. They moved with intention. Leah said, her tone precise and clinical. This is deliberate, but deliberate is also traceable. Mave nodded, understanding that each document, each time-stamped file, and notarized affidavit was a piece of armor in the fight to reclaim what was hers. They devised a plan: file for injunction to block the lien, revoke the fraudulent power of attorney, and secure public testimony to prevent future obfuscation. Witnesses were contacted: neighbors who had lent Brent money and never seen repayment, small business owners deceived by Kaye's manipulations, community members who had observed subtle yet persistent misconduct. Each person who had once remained silent was now activated, ready to testify and validate Mave's claims. By the time the late morning sun cast long shadows across the streets, Mave returned home carrying the energy of momentum and controlled fury. She moved with intent through her house, checking locks, reinforcing doors, and placing critical documents into multiple secure locations. Encrypted folders, USB drives, physical copies, all distributed and hidden. Every contingency she had planned for was executed without hesitation. Then came the envelope from Brent, more aggressive than before. A quitclaim deed, demanding the surrender of her property entirely. Mave didn't flinch. She carried it outside to the fire pit, lighting a match and allowing each page to curl into smoke, a ritual of defiance and reclamation. The act was deliberate, symbolic, a message to herself and the world. She would not be intimidated. She contacted the neighborhood council, requesting an emergency session, framing it as a matter larger than personal grievance, an issue of communal integrity and protection against exploitation. Mave prepared meticulously for the evening's gathering, organizing folders, color-coding evidence, arranging seating for witnesses. By the time attendees arrived, she stood calm and resolute, the weight of betrayal transformed into a calculated display of authority. The first murmurs filled the air, neighbors whispering and exchanging glances as they realized the depth of deception orchestrated by Brent and Kaye. Mave's voice cut through, steady, deliberate, recounting the sequence of events, the withdrawals, the falsified power of attorney, the lien attempt, and the impact on community trust. One by one, witnesses presented their testimonies: financial losses, misleading documentation, and personal encounters with manipulation. Each statement reinforced her narrative, validating the evidence she had gathered. By nightfall, signatures and notarized affidavits completed the record. Mave exhaled, a mixture of relief and triumph coursing through her. She had reclaimed authority over her life and her assets, transforming betrayal into a meticulously documented path toward justice. Brent and Kaye would not simply encounter her reaction. They would face the full consequence of their actions, precise, unstoppable, and unanticipated. The night had barely settled when Mave returned home, the city's hum fading behind her as she stepped across the threshold, determined and unshaken. The house, usually a sanctuary, now felt like a fortress bristling with the knowledge of recent betrayals. Every corner, every lock, every discreet hiding place had been checked twice. She placed the USBs, encrypted folders, and printed evidence in strategic locations, one in her purse, one in a safety deposit box at a trusted branch, and one buried within the cabinet labeled "Only for Emergencies." Each placement was deliberate, ensuring that Brent or Kaye could not find or tamper with them. Yet it wasn't the documents alone that fortified her resolve. It was the knowledge that she had created a network of allies who had witnessed the pattern of deceit over the years. By 2 p.m., Leah Winters was on the phone, ready to review video footage captured earlier in the day, including Brent's threats, Kaye's casual intimidation, and the faint cracks of uncertainty that appeared in their demeanor. Mave sent each file, observing Leah's reactions as the pieces of their narrative fell into place. Leah's dry laugh punctuated the conversation, a sharp, satisfying sound that signaled recognition of the enemy's vulnerability. Mave felt it, too, the satisfaction of meticulous preparation, the thrill of justice unfolding on her terms. But there was no room for complacency. By 3 p.m., she had begun drafting emails to members of the Homeowners Association, to small business owners, and to neighbors who had long held silent suspicions about Brent and Kaye. Each message included carefully compiled evidence, timelines of unauthorized withdrawals, screenshots, notarized affidavits, and a brief, pointed message: "They attempted to erase me. Now, the truth must be seen." Within minutes, responses began to flow. Neighbors confirmed their experiences, small business owners verified deceit, and the collective voice of the community began to swell. The pressure on Brent and Kaye was building even before they realized it. By 4:20 p.m., Brent had attempted to reach her, his call ignored, his frustration growing. Soon after, an unknown number sent a screenshot of a message Brent had forwarded to one of his investors, shifting blame to Kaye, revealing the cracks in their coordinated scheme. Mave didn't react with anger. She allowed the information to strengthen her strategy, to clarify the narrative she would present next. Each act of deception became a weapon she wielded with precision. That night, she reviewed the final pieces of her plan. The injunctions, legal filings, and neighborhood council evidence were all prepared, but the next step was public disclosure, a carefully calculated exposure of fraud that would leave no room for misinterpretation. By 6:30 a.m. the following morning, Mave was seated at her kitchen table, surrounded by printed documents, laptop open, coffee still hot from the thermos she had prepared the night before. Leah had confirmed that all emergency injunctions had cleared preliminary checks, the lien was frozen, and the fraudulent power of attorney was being formally contested. Yet Mave's work was far from complete. She began assembling a presentation, a short, precise deck labeled "Protecting Property, Preserving Integrity." It was framed as a neighborhood safety briefing, an innocuous title designed to keep the focus clean and professional, yet every slide contained the irrefutable truth. Transaction receipts, notarized statements, dates, and names were displayed without commentary, leaving the evidence to speak for itself. By 8 a.m., Angelo had submitted his affidavit, detailing the $6,000 he had lent Brent and never received. Sharon followed with evidence of tax ID misuse and correspondence revealing Kaye's attempts to manipulate legal and financial systems. Each piece of testimony, each documented interaction, created a growing shield of undeniable proof. The narrative was no longer one of confusion or fear. It was a fortress of accountability that Brent and Kaye could not dismantle. By 10:45 a.m., Mrs. Dupree had compiled the neighborhood council statements, each signature a testament to the pattern of deception and abuse. 3 additional residents submitted separate letters, expanding the reach of accountability. Mave reviewed each document carefully, arranging them in color-coded folders, ensuring that every detail, every timestamp, and every connection was immediately accessible. The network of evidence was now complete, a web designed to trap the manipulations of those who believed familial ties would shield them from consequence. By late morning, Mave felt a cold satisfaction. Brent and Kaye had assumed she would react with emotion, with fear, or with hesitation. Instead, she had transformed betrayal into methodical, precise action. Each fraudulent transaction, each attempt at coercion, each lie and manipulation would now be met with calculated consequence. The power had shifted. They were no longer in control. Mave leaned back in her chair, feeling a rare moment of calm determination, her mind racing through every potential countermove. She was prepared for confrontation, for exposure, and for the eventual unraveling of the scheme that had threatened her security and dignity. The day stretched ahead with purpose, a continuous series of calculated maneuvers, each designed to reclaim what had been taken, to reveal the truth, and to ensure that Brent and Kaye could no longer manipulate the systems or the people around them. By noon, Mave had already begun drafting the initial press release, preparing to bring local media into the story, carefully maintaining professional tone, ensuring the factual narrative was undeniable. Her strategy was clear. Visibility would be her greatest weapon. Those who once underestimated her would now witness the full scope of her response, orchestrated with patience, precision, and the unmistakable authority of someone who refused to be silenced. By late afternoon, Mave had mobilized her allies and witnesses, preparing for the pivotal neighborhood council meeting that would cement the narrative of accountability. The room was charged with anticipation as neighbors trickled in, many exchanging quiet whispers, their eyes flicking toward Mave with a mixture of curiosity and respect. She had arranged the seating with precision. Witnesses positioned strategically, documents and evidence at hand, laptop connected to the projector for clear visual presentation. The council's chair, Mr. Callahan, opened the session with routine formalities, oblivious to the storm about to unfold. Mave stood, her posture composed yet commanding, exuding the quiet authority of someone fully in control. She began with a measured introduction, framing the discussion as a matter of communal responsibility, avoiding inflammatory language while hinting at the gravity of what had transpired. Her first slide displayed a timeline of events, clear, factual, undeniable. The room went silent. Neighbors leaned forward, captivated by the clarity of her presentation. Mave narrated each instance: the unauthorized withdrawals, the falsified power of attorney, the attempted lien, and the web of deception orchestrated by Brent and Kaye. Her voice remained steady, each word deliberate, emphasizing the sequence of manipulation without injecting personal anger. This was not a plea, it was an exposition. One by one, witnesses presented their accounts. Angelo's voice was steady as he recounted lending money to Brent, only to have promises broken. Sharon detailed how Kaye had attempted to manipulate legal and financial systems, and her hands trembled slightly as she presented the documents proving the fraudulent activities. Each testimony, paired with Mave's meticulously compiled evidence, created an undeniable narrative that left little room for doubt. Mave watched as Brent and Kaye arrived late, their expressions a mixture of surprise, apprehension, and thinly veiled indignation. They took seats at the far end of the room, attempting to minimize attention, but the energy in the room had shifted. Mave continued, projecting calm authority, letting the evidence speak for itself. Transaction records, notarized affidavits, and printed communications were displayed, color-coded, and arranged for maximum clarity. Brent shifted uneasily, whispering something to Kaye, who responded with a forced smile, but their attempts to maintain composure were futile. The community's focus was fixed entirely on the truth, and the weight of their actions was becoming palpable. At the culmination of the presentation, Mave outlined the steps she had already taken. Injunctions filed, accounts frozen, legal filings underway, and the fraudulent lien blocked. She emphasized that the actions were not only to protect her, but to safeguard the community and maintain integrity in local financial dealings. A hush fell over the room as she concluded, leaving space for reflection. The council members exchanged glances, some nodding in acknowledgement, others flipping through the carefully prepared dossiers. Finally, Mr. Callahan spoke, commending Mave for her diligence and courage, noting that her meticulous documentation had provided an example of how civic responsibility and personal vigilance could intersect to safeguard the neighborhood. Brent attempted to speak, his tone defensive, seeking to explain or justify actions, but Mave's presentation had shifted the room irrevocably. Each neighbor, each witness, silently validated her narrative, leaving Brent and Kaye with minimal space to maneuver. The council formally recorded the testimonies, notarized affidavits, and documentation into public record. Mave observed the process with quiet satisfaction, Legal confirmation and community acknowledgement had fortified her position. She knew this was only part of the battle. External exposure through local media and continuous monitoring of financial accounts would ensure accountability was not only immediate but sustained. By early evening, the council session concluded. Mave collected the remaining documents, ensuring that every piece of evidence was properly archived. Brent and Kaye departed, their faces a mix of frustration and silent acknowledgement that their scheme had failed. Mave's strategy had succeeded not through aggression, but through meticulous preparation, clarity, and the unflinching presentation of truth. Returning home, she allowed herself a brief moment to breathe, knowing that the next phase, legal proceedings, public exposure, and the ongoing monitoring of financial systems, would demand the same level of precision and resolve. The house felt different now, not merely a sanctuary, but a command center, a base from which justice had been initiated and would continue to unfold. Mave's eyes scanned the room, resting briefly on each secure document, each encrypted folder, every strategic placement of evidence. She was prepared, resolute, and fully aware that her actions had transformed the power dynamic. The night outside was quiet, yet within her, a storm of controlled determination persisted. Brent and Kaye had underestimated her, assuming fear or hesitation would be her response. Instead, she had methodically dismantled their plans, mobilized witnesses, fortified evidence, and established a path of accountability that would endure. As the city lights flickered through her windows, Mave's thoughts were already several steps ahead, envisioning legal arguments, press releases, and community updates. Each scenario was anticipated, each potential move countered with precision. The quiet intensity of the evening reflected the gravity of her achievements and the unyielding resolve that would define the next chapter of this unfolding battle. The following morning, Mave arrived at the law firm with the quiet precision of someone entirely in control of her narrative. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft glow over the city streets, yet the weight of the day ahead pressed upon her shoulders. Not as fear, but as responsibility. Leah Winters was already waiting, her laptop open, a stack of preliminary legal briefs at her side, and the air between them hummed with anticipation. "Everything's in place," Leah said, her voice calm yet tinged with excitement. Mave nodded, reviewing the final iterations of injunctions and filings. Each document had been double-checked, cross-referenced with notarized statements, financial records, and video evidence. The fraudulent lien, the misappropriated funds, and Kaye's attempts to manipulate legal instruments were all meticulously cataloged. By 10 a.m., the first press release had been drafted, a concise, factual summary of events, highlighting the legal measures taken to safeguard Mave's property and financial assets, as well as the broader implications for community accountability. Mave insisted on precision. No sensationalism, no emotion-driven hyperbole, only verifiable facts. Leah smiled faintly, understanding that this approach amplified credibility far beyond simple indignation. Within the hour, the release was sent to local news outlets, community blogs, and social media channels, each carefully curated to reach the audience that mattered most: neighbors, investors, and civic authorities. As the information circulated, responses began flooding in messages of support, inquiries about additional evidence, and expressions of outrage toward the deceitful actions of Brent and Kaye. The digital landscape had become a battleground, and Mave had secured a commanding position. Later that afternoon, the legal confrontation began in earnest. Brent and Kaye, now fully aware of the breadth and depth of the evidence against them, attempted to present arguments of mitigation, deflection, and partial innocence. Leah countered each assertion with documents, timestamps, and corroborated witness testimony. The courtroom, or rather, the small, civic legal chamber, was tense, filled with the quiet murmur of observers and the soft scratching of pens on paper. Brent's frustration grew palpable as each claim he attempted to make was systematically refuted. Kaye, typically composed and manipulative, showed subtle signs of unease, her responses increasingly defensive and strained. Mave remained calm, her focus unwavering. Each rebuttal, each objection, each procedural maneuver was anticipated. She was prepared not only to present evidence, but to ensure that the integrity of the narrative remained intact under scrutiny. By late afternoon, the presiding judge acknowledged the strength of Mave's submissions, granting preliminary injunctions and freezing any assets that had been improperly transferred. The fraudulent power of attorney was invalidated, and Brent and Kaye were formally warned against attempting any further financial manipulations. Mave's attention shifted seamlessly to the media aspect of her strategy. Interviews were scheduled with local news channels, podcasts, and community forums. In each instance, Mave's delivery was composed, authoritative, and emotionally resonant without lapsing into overt personal grievances. She spoke of accountability, community vigilance, and the importance of protecting one's assets and rights. Each statement was carefully calibrated to maintain credibility, command respect, and prevent misinterpretation. By evening, social media was abuzz. Stories detailing the fraudulent actions, the injunctions, and Mave's meticulous preparation had gone viral in the local community. Support poured in from unexpected quarters. Business leaders, civic authorities, and even financial advisors who offered guidance and validation. Brent and Kaye found themselves increasingly isolated. Attempts to rally sympathy or cast doubt were drowned out by the clarity of documented evidence and Mave's unwavering composure. Returning home, Mave allowed herself a brief reprieve. Her house, once a backdrop to anxiety and tension, now felt like the nerve center of a carefully orchestrated operation. Each document, each digital file, and each strategic note a testament to foresight and preparation. Yet she knew that victory was still in progress. Ongoing monitoring of financial accounts, additional legal filings, and maintaining public clarity through media channels were all critical to ensuring lasting accountability. As night fell, Mave reviewed the day's developments, the court's acknowledgement of the evidence, the freezing of misappropriated assets, the community's growing awareness, and the strategic communication she had orchestrated. Every piece fit perfectly into a larger puzzle, one that Brent and Kaye had believed they controlled, but had, in fact, lost. She leaned back in her chair, feeling a rare moment of quiet satisfaction, knowing that methodical preparation, strategic thinking, and unwavering resolve had shifted the balance of power decisively. The day had proven that betrayal could be countered not with reactionary anger, but with calm, deliberate action, ensuring that truth, accountability, and justice prevailed. In the days that followed, the repercussions for Brent and Kaye intensified, revealing the full consequences of their calculated deception. Mave remained vigilant, aware that their desperation could manifest in unpredictable ways, but confident that her preparations had anticipated every potential maneuver. Brent, once self-assured and dismissive, now faced mounting legal pressure and public scrutiny. Attempts to contact former allies for support were met with caution or outright refusal. The community, having observed the meticulous evidence Mave had compiled, began distancing themselves. Kaye, whose manipulative tactics had previously relied on charm and calculated persuasion, now confronted a landscape where credibility was no longer hers to claim. Every effort to sway opinion, whether through subtle social media posts, phone calls, or legal countermoves, was systematically neutralized by Mave's proactive strategy. She continued her methodical monitoring of financial records, ensuring that no further unauthorized transactions could occur. Each alert triggered immediate response, whether through her attorney Leah, direct communication with banking institutions, or official notifications filed with regulatory authorities. Meanwhile, media attention began to amplify. News articles highlighted the importance of transparency, civic vigilance, and legal preparedness, often citing Mave's careful documentation as a blueprint for responsible action. The public response was overwhelmingly supportive. Messages of encouragement, offers of assistance, and requests for guidance poured in. Mave, ever composed, managed each interaction with precision, sharing insights without overexposure, emphasizing practical measures while maintaining discretion about ongoing legal proceedings. Within the community, neighbors began organizing, inspired by the clarity and courage of Mave's approach. Workshops on financial literacy, legal awareness, and asset protection started forming, creating a ripple effect of preparedness and accountability. This reinforced Maeve's influence and underscored the long-term impact of her actions. Her battle was not merely personal. It had become a catalyst for systemic vigilance. Brent, increasingly cornered, attempted to file motions contesting the injunctions and asset freezes, but the court responded swiftly, citing the overwhelming evidence and the credibility of witness testimony. Each document he submitted was dissected and countered by Leah with meticulous precision, leaving him no room to maneuver. Kaye tried to employ social manipulation tactics, reaching out to influential community members in hopes of generating support, but Maeve's transparency and prior disclosures had neutralized such efforts. Their combined strategies, once calculated and confident, now faltered under the weight of accountability and public awareness. As the legal process unfolded, Mave continued to focus on strategic follow-ups. She scheduled regular check-ins with Leah, ensuring that every motion, court date, and potential loophole was anticipated and addressed. Secure backups of all documentation were maintained both digitally and physically, and communication channels were monitored to prevent any surprises. At home, her environment mirrored her meticulous approach. Every document organized, every digital file encrypted, every strategic note cross-referenced with actionable steps. In the midst of these logistical operations, Mave allowed herself brief moments of reflection. The journey from discovery to action had been intense, demanding, and emotionally taxing, yet each step reinforced her sense of purpose. The knowledge that her diligence was not only protecting her own assets, but also educating and inspiring a broader community imbued her with quiet satisfaction. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across her study, Mave reviewed the public statements and court filings from the past week. The trajectory was clear. Brent and Kaye were isolated, their credibility eroded, and the legal system firmly aligned with documented truth. She mapped out the next series of actions: final legal submissions, targeted media updates, and community engagement to ensure that the outcome would be both definitive and enduring. The sense of control she felt was not arrogance, but a testament to preparation, foresight, and disciplined execution. By maintaining composure, leveraging evidence, and prioritizing strategic communication, Mave had transformed what began as a personal violation into a demonstrable narrative of accountability, civic responsibility, and empowered action. As night fully settled, she allowed herself a moment to breathe, recognizing that the storm had been weathered not through impulsive retaliation, but through deliberate, calculated steps, and that the final resolution was now within reach. The courtroom was once again tense, the atmosphere thick with anticipation, as Brent and Kaye prepared for what they believed would be their last chance to shift the narrative in their favor. This time, however, the energy in the room belonged to Mave. Her presence was composed, authoritative, and calm, a stark contrast to the anxious and defensive energy emanating from her adversaries. Leah had meticulously prepared every document, cross-referenced each financial record, and assembled compelling witness statements. The judge, aware of the intricate details of the case, leaned forward, signaling the gravity of the proceedings. Brent attempted to speak first, launching into a series of arguments designed to distract and deflect. Yet Maeve's evidence, strategically highlighted by Leah, dismantled each claim with clarity and precision. The fraudulent contracts, manipulated signatures, and fabricated correspondence, all previously documented, were presented with methodical thoroughness, leaving little room for doubt. Kaye interjected occasionally, her tone oscillating between defensiveness and frustration, but each interruption was addressed immediately, the legal team neutralizing attempts to obfuscate or mislead. Outside the courtroom, the media coverage amplified every moment. Cameras captured expressions, reactions, and statements, creating a public record that reinforced transparency and accountability. Community members, aware of the unfolding drama through social channels, followed closely, their messages of support and admiration growing with each passing hour. As the hearing progressed, the court acknowledged the systemic nature of Brent and Kaye's actions. The judge highlighted the pattern of deceit, the deliberate exploitation of legal loopholes, and the extensive preparation and diligence exhibited by Mave. In a defining moment, the injunctions were confirmed, all illicitly transferred assets were permanently secured, and directives were issued to prevent any future manipulations. Brent's attempts at last-minute arguments were rendered ineffective. The court's clarity reflected the thoroughness of Mave's documentation and the credibility of her presentation. Kaye's expression faltered, her usual composure undermined by the unyielding clarity of the proceedings. Outside, supporters quietly celebrated, knowing that justice was not only served but documented in a way that would deter similar actions in the future. Once the legal proceedings concluded, Mave focused on consolidating her victory. She coordinated with financial institutions to ensure that all accounts were secure, legal records were properly archived, and community outreach initiatives were reinforced. The public response continued to swell. Articles praising her strategic approach, analytical precision, and unwavering calm circulated widely. Workshops, seminars, and civic discussions were planned, with Mave at the center as both a participant and an organizer, sharing insights and practical strategies for protecting assets and ensuring accountability. Brent and Kaye, now publicly discredited, found themselves isolated, their credibility eroded in both legal and social spheres. Efforts to challenge the outcome or regain influence proved futile. The meticulous documentation, corroborated evidence, and strategic public communication orchestrated by Mave created an unassailable foundation of accountability. As days passed, Mave reflected on the journey. From the initial discovery of deception to the meticulous gathering of evidence, from navigating complex legal challenges to strategically managing media narratives, every step had been executed with foresight and precision. The lessons learned extended beyond personal victory. The importance of preparation, the power of transparency, and the impact of disciplined, strategic action became evident not only to her, but to the broader community she had influenced. That evening, as she stood on her balcony, gazing at the city lights, a profound sense of calm settled over her. The storm had passed, but more importantly, the foundation for ongoing vigilance and community accountability had been laid. Brent and Kaye's downfall was complete, but the greater narrative, one of empowerment, strategic foresight, and resilience, remained. Mave's story was no longer solely about personal justice. It had become a testament to the transformative power of preparation, clarity, and measured action. As night deepened, she felt a sense of fulfillment that transcended mere victory. Justice had been secured, truth had prevailed, and a community had been fortified through example. In that quiet moment, Mave understood that while the battle had been intense and the challenges formidable, the culmination of careful strategy, unwavering focus, and deliberate action had not only resolved a personal crisis, but had created lasting impact far beyond her own sphere. In the weeks following the courtroom resolution, the atmosphere around Mave's life shifted from tension to purposeful engagement. The legal victory had cemented her position, but she knew that true impact extended beyond mere personal vindication. Community leaders began reaching out, Inspired by her approach to accountability and her unwavering composure in the face of deceit, workshops were organized in local community centers and online forums, with Mave as a keynote speaker detailing step-by-step strategies for financial vigilance, legal preparedness, and transparent record-keeping. Her story became a case study in civic resilience, illustrating how methodical action could safeguard not only individual interests, but also community integrity. Brent and Kaye, now fully ostracized from the circles they had once manipulated, struggled to regain relevance. Their efforts to reclaim influence or present alternative narratives were systematically discredited, not only by the court's decisions, but also by the robust documentation of Mave's strategic responses. Financial institutions flagged them as high risk, and their professional reputations suffered irreparable damage. The ripple effects extended further. Associates who had once tolerated or enabled unethical practices severed ties, understanding that the credibility of their networks depended on transparency and accountability. Meanwhile, Mave maintained her careful balance between public engagement and personal boundaries. Each public appearance, interview, or community discussion was thoughtfully prepared, emphasizing practical guidance rather than personal grievance. She underscored the importance of foresight, meticulous documentation, and strategic communication, ensuring that the lessons of her experience could be applied widely without compromising privacy or security. Social media continued to amplify her story, but Mave remained selective, curating content to highlight educational value and civic empowerment rather than sensationalism. Her approach fostered an environment of trust, credibility, and measured influence, reinforcing her role not just as a victor in a personal conflict, but as a model of strategic foresight and leadership. On a personal level, Mave began to explore deeper reflections on resilience and adaptability. The ordeal with Brent and Kaye had tested not only her patience and analytical skills, but also her emotional endurance. Each challenge required a balance of intellect and empathy, rigor and discretion, strategic calculation, and moral clarity. In moments of quiet, she would review the series of decisions that had guided her through the crisis, every choice to document, verify, and communicate, and recognize the power that deliberate preparation conferred. Family and close friends noted the subtle transformation as well. Mave's experience, though intense, had strengthened her sense of agency and reinforced the values she considered essential: integrity, responsibility, and strategic foresight. Her interactions with others became more intentional, focused not on superficial engagement, but on meaningful contribution and shared growth. The community, inspired by her example, began implementing systemic changes to prevent similar occurrences. Local civic organizations incorporated financial literacy and legal preparedness into their programs. Small businesses adopted transparent accounting practices, and neighborhood associations developed protocols for dispute resolution and public accountability. Mave's influence extended beyond personal vindication. She had catalyzed a broader movement emphasizing foresight, responsibility, and proactive planning. Even Brent and Kaye, despite their fall from grace, remained a cautionary tale, a living example of how calculated deception ultimately falters against strategic preparation and transparent action. As months passed, Mave continued to monitor developments, ensuring that the legal protections and public awareness she had cultivated remained effective. Her life regained a rhythm marked by both accomplishment and intentionality. She pursued personal goals, deepened community engagement, and maintained vigilance over the systems she had helped fortify. Each day reinforced the central lesson of her journey: that methodical planning, integrity, and strategic action not only counter deceit, but can transform challenges into enduring opportunities for impact. Standing once more on her balcony one evening, Mave observed the quiet hum of the city below. The sense of relief and accomplishment was profound, yet tempered with awareness. Victory had been achieved not through reactive measures or emotional retaliation, but through deliberate, measured, and disciplined effort. Brent and Kaye had been held accountable, the community empowered, and Maeve herself emerged not only as a survivor of manipulation, but as a leader, strategist, and beacon of reasoned action. The night air carried a sense of finality and possibility, signaling that while one chapter had closed, the principles forged through this experience would guide all future endeavors. In that moment, Maeve understood fully that justice, foresight, and integrity, when executed with precision and perseverance, could create outcomes far greater than mere personal retribution. They could reshape communities, fortify trust, and inspire lasting, meaningful change. As the months settled into a more stable rhythm, Maeve found herself reflecting deeply on the entire journey, from the initial discovery of Brent and Kaye's duplicity to the ultimate resolution of the conflict. The intensity of the experience had left lasting impressions, not only on her personal life, but also on the broader community she had touched. Her home, once a space of constant vigilance and meticulous planning, now exuded a quiet sense of order and accomplishment. Every file, every ledger, every communication she had preserved during the ordeal remained carefully organized, not as a relic of conflict, but as a tangible reminder of the power of preparation and foresight. Maeve recognized that the victory she had achieved extended far beyond the legal domain. It was a testament to discipline, strategy, and the capacity to act decisively without succumbing to panic or impulsive reaction. The lessons learned about documentation, accountability, communication, and personal resilience were now principles she sought to embed into every aspect of her life and share with those around her. Community engagement continued to be a central focus. Maeve frequently spoke at workshops, schools, and online seminars, emphasizing practical strategies for safeguarding assets, navigating legal complexities, and building transparent, accountable networks. Her story became an example for small businesses, civic organizations, and individuals alike, demonstrating how deliberate action and consistent vigilance could prevent exploitation and empower communities. Brent and Kaye, though legally and socially sidelined, became symbols of the consequences of unchecked manipulation. Their downfall, meticulously documented and publicly acknowledged, served as a cautionary tale, illustrating the cost of deceit and the strength inherent in methodical, principled resistance. Maeve, however, never allowed her focus to turn toward vindictiveness. Her reflections were centered on empowerment, education, and the cultivation of resilience, not revenge. By maintaining this perspective, she reinforced a legacy of constructive influence, demonstrating that justice achieved through measured action carries enduring significance far beyond personal retribution. In her private moments, Maeve also contemplated her emotional journey. The strain of confronting betrayal and orchestrating a complex legal strategy had tested her patience, intellect, and empathy. Yet, the process had fostered growth, an increased capacity for discernment, heightened awareness of human behavior, and a strengthened ability to navigate uncertainty. These lessons became intrinsic to her identity, shaping not only her decisions in similar future challenges, but also informing the ways in which she mentored others. Social recognition, while gratifying, was secondary to the internal satisfaction Maeve experienced from having acted with integrity and foresight. The true measure of her success lay in the stability she had restored, the awareness she had cultivated, and the empowerment she had instilled in others. Community initiatives, influenced by her example, flourished. Educational programs emphasized financial literacy, legal preparedness, and transparent governance. Local organizations incorporated policies inspired by her strategic approach, creating resilient systems that would deter misconduct and encourage accountability. Maeve's presence in these initiatives was both active and advisory, allowing her to guide without dominating, to inspire without overshadowing, and to ensure that principles of integrity remained at the core of ongoing efforts. Even Brent and Kaye's attempts at rehabilitation or reinterpretation of their actions were met with scrutiny. Their diminished credibility, combined with the community's heightened awareness and legal precedent established through Mave's actions, ensured that any future attempts at influence would be carefully examined and unlikely to succeed. As she looked forward, Mave felt a sense of readiness for whatever challenges might arise. The ordeal had equipped her with practical experience, strategic insight, and emotional resilience. She understood that while threats and obstacles are inevitable, the combination of preparation, methodical action, and principled decision-making provided the most reliable path to resolution and empowerment. Standing once again on her balcony, observing the quiet glow of the city lights, Maeve allowed herself a rare moment of reflection and gratitude. The journey had been arduous, yet every trial had reinforced her capacity for discernment, leadership, and community impact. She recognized that true power lies not in retaliation or control, but in measured action, strategic foresight, and the ability to transform challenges into lasting lessons for oneself and others. In that tranquil moment, Maeve internalized the ultimate truth of her experience, that integrity, persistence, and deliberate action not only secure justice, but also create enduring legacy, an influence that continues to resonate long after the immediate conflict has passed. And with that understanding, she embraced the future with confidence, knowing that her life, choices, and the systems she helped fortify were aligned with principles that would endure, inspire, and protect for years to come.